I believe in the future of computation. I believe in what it can do to empower our lives. And so, in a sense, I'm trying to build the best technology to help humans do that. And, my day job is, in a sense, to take over more human tasks. I want to push the boundaries of what we can do, whether it's data science or whatever, to push those boundaries. And what I'm actually going to do now is something that you won't be able to see here, but I'm going to hopefully automate my maths and get a picture of me, which you can't see, but you might be able to see on the Twitter stream in a moment. And I'm going to say I'm sad because my projector isn't working, and I'm going to tweet that. And if everything goes right, which thematically is probably unlikely today, you might see it on Conrad Wolfram in a moment and see whether that actually worked. But what I was trying to show is I'm automating all the steps between recognizing me, putting up sadness, happiness, doing sentiment recognition, tweeting it on the Twitter stream, and so forth. And hopefully you can actually get all of those things together. That's the kind of automation we're trying to do. So my day job is computation for everyone, trying to get smart automation to happen. My evening job, which is what I was trying to see the other side of, is what about everyone for computation? How can we get humans set up for this new computational era? Now, you might think this is all contradictory. You might think that, why can my day is, fixing computers up to make it easier for humans. Why am I now saying we need to fix the human up? Well, because we've moved further. We expect more. And so we expect the human to get up to the next level. And I want to explain how that fits into my picture for education. So the real world has changed. How should education react? How has the real world changed? Well, one of the key ways is we now have ubiquitous computation. So, I've got 2 computing devices right here, as most of you have, at least 3 actually. I've got my watch as well, all of which can do high-powered computation. We have computation available to almost all of us, almost all of the time. And that changes lots of things. Now, another thing is that computation is applied everywhere. Prototyping, medical imaging, trading, archaeological surveying. And all these subjects now have things in front of them like computational biology, computational history, computational linguistics. You see a pattern there, right? Things have become computational. There are ways of looking at these different subjects in a computational way as well as the way they were, even things that are quite unexpected, like history. Example I was going to show you, it won't show up here, is I could look up the human genome and find a sequence within 10 seconds. That's amazing. I'm on a laptop computer here, on an internet connection. I can go find that human genome very quickly. I can go and do sentiment analysis on a book. These are all computational history kinds of things. Now, a key field in all of this is data science. It's not the only area of computation, but it's the one that's really critical sort of at the moment. Everybody's worrying about, can they do better science with their data? And so a key challenge for society is, can we have citizen data analysts? Can the whole population do enough understanding of data that they can live in a good way and not be fooled by it and so forth? So that takes me on to one of the things I love to question when we think about education. And by the way, my answer to the question at the beginning was, what's the point of education? To enrich life, is the normal answer I give. But not just enrich ease, not just in making money, but in having a more fulfilling life. So one of the key ways to think about this is, what are today's survival skills? They're not lighting a fire to stop wild animals coming into your cave, at least not in most places. What are they? And another question to ask is, what are tomorrow's top value-added skills? What are the things that are going to get you a better job, make you feel like you're more prosperous, etc.? What are those skills? Now, there are lots of aspects to those skills, but I think one core skill that actually covers both of those is what I would call computational thinking. Being able to reason in a computational way, apply computation as one of the modes of problem solving, not the only mode. Here's the big problem we've got today. Where is this sitting in our school education? Where is computational thinking in our curricula around the world? Well, the place you'd expect to look for this is maths. Maths is the mainstream computational subject in our schools that's basically compulsory around the world. I'm going to argue it's 80% the wrong subject. So I don't think maths is achieving much computational thinking in our students, and it's causing all sorts of other problems as well. And why do I say that? Because I believe, we have a product named Mathematica. I believe in math, right? So why am I saying that? Well, there's one key big difference that's missed out. It's pretty obvious: computers. You see, in the real world, computers do almost all the calculating that makes math so valuable to our lives. In education, we make our students learn how to do all the calculating by hand. And when they're very, very lucky, if they've done that, they might be able to use a calculator. And if they've done that, they might be able to apply it to a real problem, 8 years later. Okay, there's a big problem. Those are 80% different. And that's why the math curricula, that means the fundamental issue, the math curricula around the world have a problem because they assume you've got to learn to calculate everything by hand. And that isn't what you need in the real world. You need to do much harder problems with a computer. So let's just step back from it. Why are we learning math in the first place? 3 good reasons. Technical jobs, math really empowers those, kind of the crucial piece, if it's the right math. Or this really should be the answer. Why should everyone learn the right math? Is really what I should be answering here. The second thing is what you might call everyday living, just knowing how to function in a society. It's like reading and writing. You need literacy to just function. Nowadays, you need a certain amount of math, data science, data understanding to function, to be not dropped out of the society. And the third reason I might give is logical mind training. You could argue that in the past, classics people thought was this, philosophy. There are many aspects of it, but math is a good central subject you would hope would train this, even if not for its own right. So what's the problem? This is the slide I would most like to have shown you. But there are 4 steps to math. What is math? What is it when you're doing math? There are basically 4 steps. Define the question. If I talk for too long and we seal everything down, how long will you all survive? Don't know. It depends how much air there is and lots of other things. The second thing is to abstract it. I could talk about the question in English and hope we can figure out an answer, but it's much, much more powerful if I abstract it to a language that allows me to apply hundreds of years of calculation to that, now with a computer, to get an answer. So step 2 is abstracting it, to math, to code. Step 3 is computing, this magical step where we go from the question in abstract form to the answer in abstract form, x equals 3. And the 4th step is interpret. X equals 3. What did that mean? 3 hours to survive, x equal -5. Maybe I got the calculation wrong. Am I verifying this appropriately? Those are what math is about, the 4 steps. And what's gone crucially wrong is we are spending step 3 as a big long line at the moment, computing by hand. What we ought to be doing is getting our students to do much more of defining, abstracting, and interpreting, getting a computer to do step 3. So one of the things I like to show, if you go onto, if you have an iPhone, for example, you go onto Siri and you ask for solve x cubed plus 2x plus 1, you should get an answer through Siri from our Wolfram Alpha. Why do I like to show that? Because that's a problem that most students, after years of study, can't do by hand. So you have to ask, if I can ask my phone in 10 seconds to do that and it comes out with an answer, why the hell are we getting our students to learn this for years rather than doing higher level problems? So one of the things we need to do is approach problems, maths and all the things around computation. We need to start with real problems. What's the perfect password for your login? Great question for any 7-year-old so their friends don't break in. Am I normal? Can math help me figure that out? What is a beautiful shape? A very valid question. One of the questions we had for a country we worked with, Estonia, was, are girls better at maths? Go look at all the data, figure out what you think. Can the girls gain the answer differently from the boys? Key point. If you remove the computer from calculating in math education, you will remove almost all the context. Why do I say that? In the real world, why is math so predominant today, or computation? Because computers have mechanized this ancient process and allowed us to apply it to a huge range of areas. It was useful for bits of physics, useful for accountancy for hundreds of years, not useful for biology, not useful for many other areas that we are used for it today. The computer has allowed the context because mechanized computation is required in order that you can apply this process, this 4-step process. So if you remove the computer out of education, you can't apply the process to any of those contexts. You come up with noddy problems that we have in math exams, which don't mean anything. Everybody knows are fake. You can't do real biology. You can't do real data science. It's no good doing it with 5 points. It's a whole different set of tools that you would use. So removing the computer also changes the tool set, so then students are learning all the wrong tool set for what they'd actually need. They don't learn machine learning. Why? Well, machine learning can't be done without a computer. It doesn't make any sense. So it's not in the curriculum. So these are the kinds of issues that come up. And one of the things we often show is, a typical example in the classroom will be to get half the students to toss a coin, half the students to cheat by typing in heads and tails to the computer. Can the teacher tell who's cheated and who's actually done the real experiment? Answer, typically yes. The sequences are wrong if you do it by hand, if you cheat. And it's kind of nice to show this, and this is a typical thing that students are amazed by. How can the teacher tell that I cheated? Well, this is the beginning of how you would do credit card fraud detection, for example. You look at patterns of data. That's the real kind of thing you're doing, totally discrepant from what we do in the classroom today. One of the things we've been working on is working out what's the list of outcomes that you really want from 10 years of learning math. What does it look like? And it's on our website, computerbasedmath.org/outcomes. It's a very different list. Another question I'm often asked is, it has things, just to go back to that, it has things like, confidence to tackle new problems, not in the normal curriculum. Things like that, which are how to communicate and collaborate on technical ideas. How does computational thinking, maths, coding all relate? I think the most important thing is coding. Coding is a way to express step 2 of the process I talked about, the abstraction step. How do you write down the abstract ideas you have? Well, you traditionally used to write it in nice squiggly math stuff. Nowadays, in practice, you write it in code. That's the way you abstract. So coding is actually not exactly what most governments think it's for. Coding is, it's great for writing apps and things. It's just a way to express yourself as well. And I was going to do a nice demo with our Wolfram language, trying to do some live coding. Can't do that because my screen isn't working. One of the things we've been trying to do is build a very high-level language with algorithms included. So you can just directly do stuff. I was going to do a one-line piece of code that blocked my face out live off my video camera, for example. And that's easy to do if you've got kind of all the algorithms included. So I founded Computer-Based Math and also computationalthinking.org a few years ago. And it's a simple idea, which is build a curriculum assuming computers exist. Seems kind of obvious, but has yet to be done around the world. The other thing we've noticed is that you've got to build the curriculum backwards. The way curricula are built around the world is you have a bunch of people sitting in smoke-filled rooms, which probably aren't smoke-filled these days, but deciding that this piece of geometry is very important. They're usually math professors if it's math, and that's all fine, except the math professors don't know much about how math gets used in the real world. We've dealt for 30 years with trying to get millions of people actually using math, so we have more of a sort of rounded view of that. But what you've got to do is start with problems people might actually want to tackle, work back to the math you might actually use. Even us, even with all our experience, we kind of need to do that, and then check coverage and then build the curriculum that way. That seems a much more positive thing to do. One of the exciting things from this is you can reorder the curriculum based on conceptual, not computational complexity. So at the moment, when you think about which order you do stuff, it's all to do with how hard it is to calculate. Calculus is hard. Well, integrals are hard to calculate, so you do them late. Actually, calculus is pretty easy. Basics of calculus are pretty easy conceptually. And you should do it early. I think you should do it for 10-year-olds. Same machine learning, I think, for primary school children. Another amusing thing to muse on, should you do 3D geometry before 2D geometry? I'll leave that as an open question. So, just to summarize, there are 2 major effects of AI. Most of the panel, I think, will be discussing the other effect. The one I've talked about is what we need to learn, the subject. Because AI is changing and computation is changing the real world, that changes what we need to learn, and particularly the interface between humans and the machinery. You don't need to learn what the computer does to use the computer, and that's a facet of all industrial revolutions through history. You don't need to learn how the machinery works necessarily to use it, but you do need to learn how to interact with it, how it goes wrong, what you do about it. The thing we're going to be discussing much more is how we optimize learning given computers. Can we make it adaptive? Can we take whatever is the right subject and adapt to that and do things with that? So those are two things. It's very important not to confuse those two sort of facets, though of course they join. So in a sense, AI drives the need for change, but it also provides the tools. And obviously, the effect of AI on pedagogy, personalization, assessment, rich content, adaptivity, own interests versus mainstream, these are all things that AI can help with. Now, the effect of AI on subjects, just to summarize, is to change what humans need to learn, including what's for the computer and what's for the human, and always use the real world as your guide. So to summarize, I'm arguing we should stand on the power of automation. You've got a choice in education. When automation comes along, mechanization, what do? Do you teach everyone what the machine does, or do you step on top of it and say, okay, we've got the machine, it's sort of ubiquitous, we're going to move on? I'm arguing strongly for the second, and I think if you look through history, the second always wins. And now it's for STEM. Now we've got this power for math, for computation, for STEM. We need to stand on it. Another way to put this is don't work a level up from the machines. Don't compete with them, because you'll lose. A fantastic job. So 1988, when Mathematica launched, Steve Jobs came up with the name Mathematica, and he also came up with a quote, which I love, which says, "Mathematica will revolutionize the teaching and learning of math by focusing on the prose of mathematics without getting lost in the grammar." A very Jobsian kind of quote. I in fact, highlighted will, because the quote is so right and yet so wrong. He's so right, this should have happened, but we're still waiting. And that's kind of it. So I coined this term computational knowledge economy. For the next step after the knowledge economy is the computational knowledge economy, where we understand how we interact with computation as a human. So hope you can join our journey and transform education for the AI age. Thanks very much.
Conrad, wasn't that amazing, ladies and gents? What a cracking start. And okay, I want to know, please have a seat, so I want you to join us for our panel. I'd love to know how close an enlightened government around the world is to embracing what just seems shockingly good sense, actually. So we will find out. Next, I'm going to introduce up the panel. I'd like them all to come up together. They're going to be led out by Alex Beard from the Global Learning Lab. He has written a great book, which the FT have really rave-reviewed, on his global journey to discover what a 21st century education should look like. That's called Natural Born Learners. I plug it because chairs never plug themselves. Ladies and gentlemen, our panel. Thanks, Alex.
Thanks, Conrad. Thanks, everybody. So we are going to get into the discussion shortly. But essentially, I think, as a framing remark, I'd just like to say that my background's in education, and I've looked a lot at the future of what education will involve. And I basically think you can look at these three past revolutions in human learning. One that was about 100,000 years ago, that was a cognitive revolution. Something changed in our brains, and we were then able to create ideas. Language emerged, so we could pass ideas between people, pass them through generations. Then about 10,000 years ago came a schooling revolution, where we built institutions to teach this new technology that we had of reading and writing. And then there was a mass education revolution that came about 500 years ago, which gave us the printing press. Changes to religion meant that literacy exploded around the world and sort of gave us the school models that we have today. Well, I think that we're on the cusp, potentially, of a fourth learning revolution that's driven by new technologies and new understandings of the brain. And we're going to get into that a little bit in this session, and Conrad, of course, has already touched upon it. So we're going to begin with a little response from each of the three other panelists to Conrad's remarks, and around the question of why we should be excited or potentially worried about the role that AI might play in the future of education. I'm going to start with Joleen.
Well, for AI, basically, should I introduce myself first?
Yes, sure.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah. My name is Joleen from China. Our company's name is called Squirrel AI Learning. So we are doing AI adaptive learning. So we believe that AI will definitely not change education, but will revolutionize education, because AI has the potential to do like personalized learning for everyone, and it has infinitive computing power, and AI understands everything and more than human beings. So that's why AI has the potential to really revolutionize education in the future.
Do you want to add a bit about what Squirrel AI is doing?
Sure. We have an AI platform which is called Squirrel AI Learning Platform, and we have curriculum like English, mathematics, physics, chemistry, and Chinese, and built up into the platform. And then we give the students this learning account. Well, we charge, of course, we charge for money, and then they learn by themselves. And 70% of the time, the students learn from the AI system, and 30% of the time, that there will be a human tutor interacting with the students. And our company founded in 2014, and we have 2 million students so far, and we have 2,000 physical learning centers. And our last year's revenue was $150 million US. Yeah. So should I do introduction on me?
Do you have anything more to add on Squirrel AI at this point?
Yeah, I do have a slide about introduction.
Do you want to do that?
Yeah, should I do it now?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Sorry. The click. Yes. Yes, it's better to see in the screen. Yeah. So we use this different kind of AI technology to build up our AI platform, and yeah, this part I've already mentioned. So our business model is online model plus offline physical learning location model. So both model is the same platform. So the students either learn from home or they go to the physical learning locations. And in the atmosphere, students, friends, and teachers are there. And 70% of the time, the students learn from the computer. There's no human interaction. And then 30% of the time, the human tutor will interact because students need encouragement, need being monitored. And to approve the results of AI teaching, we held 4 competitions in the past 1.5 years. All the human-machine competitions show that the students learn from AI system won, and they have better scores. And also at the same time, the students from AI group, they learn more knowledge points than the human teacher groups. So this is the structure of our AI platform. There's 3 layers. The first one is we have learning content, we have learning map, we have the content map, we have the goals. And the second layer, we have the LRS, which is the learning record store, and we have the recommendation engine. And for the third layer, we have the real-time event collector. So for the learning map, in the student's brain, there are different knowledge graphs. So after the assessment of using our system, we can find out some of the red points means the students have not mastered the knowledge points. And the green ones means they have already mastered. And different color shows different level of mastery. And we have the worldwide first invented technique, which is called NKC, nanoscale breakdown of the knowledge components, which means, for example, a grade 8 of mathematics. Normally in China, the knowledge points should be 300. And other adaptive learning companies in US, they break down from 300 to 30,000. And what we have done is we break down from 300 to 30,000. It's really, really tiny, really, small pixels, because we want the students to save time to only learn very tiny learning points that they have not mastered. And for example, addition and subtraction of fractions. This is one of the knowledge points. This layer 1. And we have the layer 2 that we have already break down. And then layer 3. And then we have 9 layers for each different knowledge point. We believe that students should not only learn the knowledge points, but also model thinking, capacity, and methodology. So I really agree with Conrad before, yes. So we should learn like imagination, how to build up our own skills. And we also did breakdown for model thinking, capacity, and methodology. For example, in physics, we can have different kind of thinking, and different like math and Chinese. And this is the content map. So we have a combination of all the multimedia contents. And Yeah, this one example, I will just finalize. So 3 students, they have the same mastery of the knowledge points, 80%, they have all mastered, but they have different weaknesses. This is the first student. The red ones means they have not mastered. And the second student, they have different color of the red points. And the third students, they have different weaknesses. So all the students are different. They should not be sitting in the same classroom, study. And then this is another project we work with Stanford Research Institute. So yeah, I won't go really further, but for us, we believe that AI will definitely save lots of time for the students, and 80% of the time, and the students should focus on some other activities and classes. And then the most important thing, that the students should be engaged in study. They should love study. So yeah, that's it. Thank you.
Thanks, Joleen. So yeah, now can we hear from you, Sarra, at Prism, about your take on that question of how AI will change the future of education?
Right. So Adaptation, that's the name of the product that we've created. We look at the other side of when you're out of your education system, when you enter the professional environment, you still have to learn stuff. And how do we empower people to learn the right stuff at the right time, at the same time as having to remain productive in their jobs? So you have 2 options. Either you try to do an evening course and sort of virtually go back to school, or your employer sends you to a training course. In both situations, it's a huge time investment. And how do you measure the outcome, and how do you make sure that you learn exactly what you need? So our approach to AI applied to the professional education is to use our AI-driven platform to do 3 things. We call it our 3 A's. So we automate the content organization, so you can drag and drop content, and instead of creating curricula that one size fits all, and it's very linear and probably not adapted to most people, you trust that you have enough content to cover the subjects that your employees are interested in, and the engine organizes it in a multidimensional space. That multidimensional space allows us to do the second A, which is adaptive learning. So now that you don't have a preset linear learning journey, you can use a machine learning engine to drive each and individual learner to what content is most relevant to them, based on what they need to learn, yes, but also what they're ready to learn on their pre-existing competencies. And then the final A is analytics. Often what we see in e-learning, apart from low completion rates, which should be addressed by the first 2 A's, is that you get a pass rate, like a threshold. Oh, even if you click randomly, you know that you've passed 60%, and here's your certificate. But is that a real acceptable return on learning? We believe that it isn't, so we analyze exactly what you know, so that you can be confident in your own acquisition of knowledge and skills, and your employer is more inclined to invest in that experience for you, because they know exactly what return they get in the workplace. And also because it's in the cloud, you do it on demand, and it's in workflow integrated. So we believe that AI can help, yes, in the schools, but also once we leave the schools, to keep up with new technologies, to keep up with restructuring companies, to keep up with moving jobs, to always stay at the top of what we can do.
Thanks so much, Sarra. And then just finally, Olivier, can you tell us a bit about your work at 42 and how that's responding to how the world is now?
Well, actually, I do love seeing that AI can bring such kind of hope for change into education. What we did in 42 was actually in the not in the opposite way, but using another way. If you do not know 42, we are an IT school located in Paris. Our students are 18 years old plus, and we train our students to be part of the IT professional world. But we are doing this with a very specific pedagogical model. We do not have any teacher. We do not have any lecture. Our students are facing software development challenges. They need to create a piece of software. And to do that, they need to learn how to search for information, how to filter this information, and make some tests, try to figure out which information is true, false, irrelevant, completely outdated, because technology evolves at a rapid pace. And so our students need to verify all of this. Usually they can do this alone. That's why we call our pedagogical model peer learning. Our students need to collaborate. They need to debate between themselves to create some collective intelligence and then find new hypotheses to test. All of this process work in a completely gamified approach of the curriculum. Our students will try again a failed project. Our students will unlock the next project into the curriculum when they succeed. They will earn some experience points. They will have some badges, some quests. They will go through different levels. And they progress at their own pace, on their own path. So from the beginning, almost the beginning, 6 years ago, we already had in mind this individualized path for education, and for us it's something that makes sense. For us it's something that gives more freedoms to the students and help them to not only develop IT skills, but also what we think that other skills that we think that are mandatory to face an unknown future is problem solving, collaboration skills, creativity, self-learning, and we think it's very important for our students. And we first started from this point, from this perspective of education, thinking that the previous academic education was designed for the previous industrial revolution, and now we need something different into education. And right now, with all this AI coming, we are realizing that AI will help us to have more individualized, more autonomous curriculum for our students, and also to have more individually adaptive learning process for our students. So AI is something that completely makes sense in our way of learning, in our learning context.
Thank you, Olivier. So what I'd like to do in a second is to invite maybe 3 questions from the audience that we'll try to include in our panel discussion. But I'm going to kick it off with a question of my own. So as you have all been speaking, I think 2 big questions have emerged that you referenced, Conrad, in your talk, and that have come out in what you guys have also been speaking of. And those are, first of all, what is it that we should be learning in this new era in which we exist, in which technologies are ubiquitous, AI is emerging, the internet is everywhere. And then secondly, how does that shape or change how we should learn, whether that's thinking about the role that tech might play within an education so we learn how to use it, or it might play in tutoring us in the future. So those are, I think, the 2 big questions that are thrown up. And I'd like to begin with the first one. So based on your experiences, what is it that you feel we should be learning if we're to be successful in today's world? And I want to start with you, Conrad, on this one. So when I saw that you were talking about computational thinking, my initial feeling was that you were talking about learning to think like a computer. But actually, as I heard you speak, it's actually learning to think with computers. Can you explain a little bit about where that thinking emerged from you?
I mean, in the end, if you look at if you look at the whole space that you're trying to cover with sort of technical thinking, it's to solve problems. We're trying to solve problems. We're trying to make better decisions about life. The question is, how do we do that? Now, before you have machinery to help you with that, you're just doing it, the best systems of thinking you can achieve with your head, in various ways. You might do it individually, you might collaborate, you might do different aspects of that. The machine, it's like the machine has a particular part of this that extends a particular direction of what can be done massively beyond, but it's very different. It's like, it's like when people first tried to make planes, they tried to have things that flap their wings. It just turns out that it's not very easy to do that. It's easy to make a plane that works differently. And computers are a bit like that. I mean, it's like, when you're thinking, computers think differently on the whole. The big challenge that we have coming forward is, how can we optimize the hybrid human-computer model to get better decisions. I mean, that's in a nutshell what we're trying to achieve. And it's not easy, right? Because, for example, I mean, take a recent, horrific event, the Boeing 737 MAX. That's an example where you've got automation in the machine. The question is, how does the human interact with the automation, and can that coexist in a sensible way? You've got similar problems coming up with self-driving cars and the way that, once the car completely drives itself, that's one thing. If you start interacting, getting the human to forget about driving for 30 seconds and not, then you have all sorts of other problems. So that's true in many walks of life. And by the way, on the plane front, how you interact with a highly automated plane has been incredibly successful. And one of the ways that's been done is through gaining lots of experience. You need to gain experience of the real situation, done with simulators on planes. Extremely successful. We need to do much more of that in education. But don't pick simple problems. Pick real, hard, fuzzy, difficult, messy problems with hair all over them. Get the students to interact with those. They'll seem more real to the student as well, because they won't be some abstract problem they don't care about. They'll be to do with their lives if you pick them right, or they pick them. And move forward like that without trying to strip out the interesting complexity.
And Olivier, at 42, students are also learning somewhat to solve problems. What are the things that you're hoping that they're learning there at 42? Because I think it's more than just learning how to code, right?
Yes, it's definitely some problem solving. We need to have students that will be able to launch their career in a sustainable way. So if in 5 years or in 10 years they need to train again to get some new IT skills, I think we definitely fail. So we design the pedagogical process to not only put our students in front of technical problems and for them to learn how to solve this problem, but also to indeed develop a more generic problem-solving issues, more general collaboration problems and situations they will face in their own job. We want them to get an agile state of mind to face whatever the future will bring to us. I think it's definitely mandatory, and if at some point some of them can also have enough freedom to be part of the pioneer to the people who will develop and create what the future will be, we'll be glad to have such kind of students too.
Thanks, Olivier. And Sarra, you had a view on what we should be learning today in this digital era that we live in.
So if I had to choose something to describe the most crucial skill that I foresee being the most powerful in the future of the workplace is how to learn, right? So it does start at school. If you're taught to just accept information and download information from a single teacher, that doesn't necessarily train you to learn on your own, right? How to find information, how to digest it and how to put it into practice. So I really appreciate the model that you guys are running at 42 and how Squirrel can also help students sort of self-organize their learning. So I think that in the future, what we need to be ready to do is reskill, be agile. Again, that's a really good term to describe it. And basically understand that we don't need to learn everything that we think we're going to need in the next 20 years. We don't train anymore for a profession in university and stay in that job for 20 years. We have to learn what we need to do in the next few years and then be ready to reskill, upskill, and find that information. And I think that AI can help us navigate the ocean of data that is overwhelming us everywhere. It used to be very easy to find what you need and what you think you need on a Google search, for example. Nowadays, if you stick to the top 3 ranks, you know that you are missing out, so you have to dig more and more and more and more. And that's where AI is helping us manage that overwhelming amount of data that we've been producing in the last 2-3 years.
Thanks, Sarra. So I'd love to now quickly see if there are 2 questions that we can try and incorporate. That was the first hand up, and then let's go right at the very back in the coat. So what's your question, sir?
The question is, obviously what you're saying is very interesting, very applicable, but a lot of it is learning in front of a screen in the key. So how do you put the human interactions, living in a society, so on and so forth, when things do getting...
Great question. We'll incorporate that in a second. And right at the back.
Yes. First of all, I want to introduce my identity here. I'm a researcher in education, and I'm also a researcher in media and communications. And my question starts from the fixing education for the AI age. That means there's something problematic about education, which we need to address. However, I feel that we are missing context here. I'm also a teacher. The problems of education do not necessarily have to do with AI. The problems with education are the fact that they're being underfunded, and most importantly, the way we shape citizens. So my question to you is, where beyond this learnification and skillification discourse, where does pedagogy fit into shaping citizens for a democratic society that we're missing nowadays?
Great question. Okay, so I'm hopeful that we can fit answers to both those questions into our responses. And I'm going to start, Joleen, with you to kind of get the view of how, what is the role that AI is playing in changing what education looks and feels like in China specifically? Like, where's the opportunity that you're seeing? How is AI influencing what's happening there?
Okay. Well, in China, it's a little bit different because most of the parents, they want their kids to be, the top of the country, and there's always competition. But all the teachers are only in the very good cities like Beijing, Shanghai. And so most of the students, I could say 90% of the students in China, they could not access very good quality of education. And so with AI, well, actually, at the very beginning with internet, everyone could access onto the internet looking for what you need. But it's always very hard to find the most suitable learning contents for yourself, for the kids. So with AI, what we are doing is personalized. We can change the insights, so we can spread out with the AI system, and then find out what's the most suitable learning contents for the kids. So the students can access to AI system anywhere in China. And also, there's so many poor, really, really poor areas in China. There are schools, very in a very small house, and one teacher is teaching from year 1 to year 6. So even though they have internet, they have computer, but they don't have teaching resources. So we donate our AI system, but in the future, we're gonna try to help all these remote areas. So the teachers have a tool, have an AI system to help them to teach the students. So our goal is to really have all the students anywhere in China to access to really good quality of education and the most suitable ones.
But part of your model also involves keeping human teachers involved in the process. Why have you made that decision?
Because we are human beings. We always need human beings, for sure. So we will not say that there will be no teachers in the future. Teachers are always there. And at least 20 to 30%, depends on the students' feel. And we need encouragement. We need emotional, and even we need skin touching, hugging, and monitoring. So human teachers are there. It's just a changing of the roles for human teachers.
And Sarra, in the model that you're working with, what is the role of human agents with that compared to the tech that may be doing some of the diagnostics?
So first of all, I would like to put a little bit of context to why I'm here today. So we're not trying to fix education on all fronts, but we have expertise on one aspect of technology, which is AI, and we're trying to explore how this could take part into the bigger effort in adapting education nowadays. So the question was about the element of the human teacher and mentor. In school, there is no question that we need the human guidance, the human pedagogy, the human mentorship. It's the same in the workplace. The problem that our teachers are facing today is that they are overcapacity. We're asking more and more of them. We're asking them to work after hours, marking, preparing, and managing all sorts of different situations arising in one class of 20 to 30 students. And it's just too much for one person. And funding is a big issue. When you cannot find the funds to increase the number of teachers, you can what we can bring from the technology aspect of things is bring the capacity to do things at more scale. So you can drive the machine, but still use the machine without it replacing you. And in the workplace, there is no difference, in my opinion.
And Olivier, in the model of education that 42 is using, what is the combination between human interactions and human-machine interactions in education? And do you think that that could be a model that could be applied more widely across education systems?
I would say that our students spend almost half of the time in human relation. There was a question about relationship in education. I'm in higher education in France. I'm not sure that a teacher in university in front of hundreds of students have a real connection with every one of each of the students. My students in 42, they need to collaborate. And they discover that during the selection process. If they do not collaborate, if they do not talk to each other, if they do not debate, they will fail, they won't be selected. So they very early discover that it's definitely mandatory because they cannot solve everything by themselves. So I think that we are creating a learning context that improve regarding what we have right now in public education. I think that it improves a little bit collaboration, and they will have also collaboration groups that match the size of the people and the group and the kind of collaboration they will have also in companies. So I think it makes sense. Probably it can be increased, and we are an IT school run by IT guys. We are not specialists, definitely, in communication and collaboration, and probably we can improve this a lot. But I think we are already somehow better than other curriculum in higher education in France.
Thanks, Olivier. Conrad, can I pass that question to you?
I mean, particularly to the point at the back, we have many things to do to fix education, not just the things, for example, I was talking about or we've been talking about. I mean, I think just a few things to point to here. One is we've got to relook at our outcomes that we're expecting from education. And, you know, to be fair, there's been a lot of work on this around the world in different aspects. But those outcomes need to be much more general than some of the outcomes that we have specified in each subject. You know, how to collaborate, how to do things. And my view of this is we should be much more explicit about outcomes we want, even if the outcomes we want, you know, have a much more general nature, if that makes sense. So that's one issue. Another thing that relates to that is assessments. Unfortunately, in the ecosystem of education, assessments currently drive everything, at least at school, around the world. And the more pressure we put on assessments to judge, the more the assessments force the subjects to be more collimated into these sort of quantitative ways to view things. I have this expression I sometimes say, which is in the world that you know, numbers have assumed an importance beyond their ability to judge, or quantification in some cases. And that's exactly happened with these assessments. And so if you want, you know, you want lots of open-ended interaction, lots of problem solving that isn't, you know, a multiple choice question. But you also then want to say, hey, I can judge this person against this person and get an outcome. And those two are somewhat incompatible in the current state of the ecosystem. There are ways to solve that. That's another talk. So I think that the assessment mustn't be driving the ecosystem in its current form. The ecosystem has got stuck, and I think governments and others can set up the ecosystem better to allow real innovation, but we've got to then have a proper discussion as to what the outcomes really are that we want.
If I may, regarding AI into education, I've met a lot of teachers from primary school or high school, and for them it looks like that AI or IT in general, digitalization, is a trend and they can't just ignore it. So maybe it's not the best way, definitely it's not the only way, but I think that digitalization or AI, using IT in a classroom, using AI in a classroom, can be a kind of Trojan horse to bring all new practice into the classroom. But it will be probably different from one classroom to another.
Thanks, Olivier. And so, anyone who's had any experience being a teacher, or in fact probably being a student in school, knows that eventually at the end of the lesson you run out of time and wish that you could carry on and forget to have set the homework and do all those kinds of things. And I'm afraid that we have reached that point now. However, I would just like to end by saying one thing, which is I think that education is often, as a field, hugely underlooked. But for me, it's by far the most important thing for us to invest in, because the minds that are in school right now are those that will go on to create the technologies of the future. And so I think we always have to think about making that long-term plan. And I think that our 4 panelists today are very much at the forefront of thinking about these 2 big questions that we have to wrestle with, which are, what should we be learning today? And how might these new technologies that we have change the way that we do learn? So I'd like to say a really big thank you and encourage you to look more into the work of each of our panelists, to Conrad, to Olivier, to Sarra, and to Joleen, and their organizations and companies, because I think you'll find it a very, very rich experience, which will give you lots of food for thought about those 2 things. So a big, big thank you
Thanks.
to
And
our panelists.
do visit our stand under the impact stage, I think, which will have the demos I couldn't show you. Thanks. Okay,
So thanks very much. Big round of applause for our panel. Thank you.